You lost them the moment you started trying to keep them. Read that again, slowly. Because the truth is not that you weren't enough. The truth is that somewhere along the way you abandoned yourself. And they felt it. You think attraction dies because of something you said. A wrong text, a missed call, a small mistake. But attraction rarely dies from a single event. It fades when your emotional center shifts, when your energy moves from grounded to grasping. When you stop choosing yourself and start choosing fear. You didn't notice it happening. At first you were calm, present, slightly detached. You had your own life, your own rhythm. You responded. You didn't chase. You were interested but not desperate. There was space around you, mystery, emotional stability. Then attachment activated, and everything changed. Psychology calls this the activation of the attachment system. When you sense uncertainty, your brain doesn't just interpret it as romantic tension. It interprets it as threat. Your nervous system shifts. Cortisol rises. Your thoughts become louder. You begin scanning for signs. Delays feel personal. Silence feels dangerous. And slowly, without realizing it, you start negotiating your standards. You reply faster. You initiate more. You explain yourself more. You tolerate small disrespect because you're afraid to lose the connection. You call it patience. You call it understanding. But deep down, it's fear of abandonment. And fear is never attractive. Not because you're weak, but because human beings are biologically wired to seek emotional stability. When someone senses that your emotional state depends on their behavior, the dynamic shifts, subtly but powerfully. You become reactive, and reaction erodes desire. There's a quiet moment most people ignore. It's the moment you feel the shift. When they pull back slightly, when the tone changes, when something feels off. That's the moment your character is tested. That's the moment mental strength matters more than charm. Instead of observing, you lean forward. Instead of breathing, you chase clarity. Instead of holding your center, you try to fix what hasn't even fully broken. And the more you try to secure them, the more unstable the connection feels. Because attraction is not built on control, it's built on emotional self-sufficiency. This is not about playing games. It's about understanding nervous system dynamics. When you are emotionally regulated, you create safety. When you are anxious, you create pressure. Even if you never say a word about it, it leaks through your tone, your timing, your eyes. Energy communicates before language does. You can feel when someone needs you too much. You've felt it before, haven't you? When someone texted you constantly, when they needed reassurance every day, when their mood depended on your response. It didn't make you feel closer. It made you feel responsible. And responsibility kills romance. Desire requires space, not distance born of avoidance, but space born of self-trust. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If you lose yourself in someone, it means there was already a fracture in your sense of self. A part of you that believes love must be earned. A part of you that equates closeness with survival. That part is not romantic. It's wounded. Attachment theory explains this clearly. When you grew up feeling inconsistent emotional availability, your nervous system learned to monitor connection constantly. You became hyper-aware, hyper-vigilant. You learned to adapt, quickly to avoid rejection. So now when someone pulls back, even slightly, your body reacts as if something serious is happening. But not every shift is danger. Sometimes it's just life. And your inability to sit calmly inside, uncertainty tells the other person something very important. You don't fully trust yourself. Confidence is not loud. It's not dominance. It's not cold indifference. Confidence is emotional containment. It's the ability to feel desire without losing direction, to care without collapsing, to want without begging, to experience uncertainty without chasing immediate reassurance. Most people never develop this. They confuse intensity with depth, obsession with love, proximity with security. But secure individuals move differently. They don't panic when someone takes longer to respond. They don't overanalyze every message. They don't immediately sacrifice boundaries to maintain harmony. They remain anchored. And anchoring is attractive because it signals abundance of self. When you hold boundaries calmly, without aggression, something shifts in the dynamic. You communicate value without saying a word. You show that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. But boundaries only work when they are real. If you say you won't tolerate inconsistency but then accept it repeatedly, you train the other person to disregard your words. And worse, you train yourself to betray your own standards. Self-betrayal erodes self-respect faster than rejection ever could. There's a scene I want you to imagine. It's late at night. You're staring at your phone. You see they're online. They haven't replied. Your mind starts constructing narratives. Maybe they're losing interest. Maybe there's someone else. Maybe you said too much. Your chest tightens. In that moment, you have two choices: react or regulate. Reaction looks like sending another message, checking their activity, asking subtle questions to test their interest, shifting your tone to be more appealing, trying harder. Regulation looks like putting the phone down, feeling the discomfort, allowing uncertainty to exist without trying to eliminate it. That small decision defines the trajectory of the relationship, because the more you demonstrate that your emotional state is internally managed, the more stable the dynamic becomes. Here's a psychological truth most people ignore. The person who needs the connection less often holds more relational power, not because they manipulate, but because they are not operating from fear. Power in relationships is not dominance. It's emotional independence. If you can walk away when your values are compromised, you radiate strength. If you stay while silently resenting, you radiate weakness. And people respond to that energy instinctively. You don't have to announce detachment. You embody it. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you understand that someone choosing you is a bonus, not your lifeline. When you internalize this, your behavior changes subtly. You speak slower. You react less. You listen more. You don't overshare to secure approval. You don't overextend to prove worth. You become selective, and selectivity is magnetic. There's something deeply attractive about someone who is not trying to be liked. Someone who is present but not chasing validation. Someone who can sit in silence without filling it with nervous energy. Silence reveals emotional maturity. When you stop trying to control outcomes, something paradoxical happens. You become more desirable, because you're no longer suffocating the connection with expectation. Expectation creates pressure. Presence creates attraction. Healing begins the moment you stop seeing relationships as solutions to loneliness. When you build a life that feels meaningful on its own, you approach love differently. You're not looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone to complement you. And that difference changes everything. If you constantly fear losing someone, ask yourself why losing them feels like losing yourself. That question is uncomfortable, but it's powerful. Because the root of emotional desperation is identity diffusion. When your sense of self is unclear, you merge quickly. You adapt excessively. You shapeshift to maintain harmony. And slowly you disappear inside the relationship. Healthy love requires differentiation. You must remain you, even when you care, even when you desire, even when you feel attachment. There's a practical psychological insight here. If you can lengthen the gap between emotional trigger and behavioral response, you change the entire dynamic of your relationships. That gap is where power lives. The strongest individuals are not those who feel less. They are those who manage what they feel. When you stop reacting impulsively, you begin responding intentionally. When you stop over-investing early, you allow organic growth. When you stop tolerating subtle disrespect, you protect your nervous system from chronic anxiety. And when you stop abandoning yourself for temporary closeness, you start building something real. You will lose people when you raise your standards. That's not failure. That's filtration. Some individuals are attracted to your insecurity because it gives them control. When you become stable, they feel less powerful. They may pull away. Let them. If someone only stays when you are anxious and overgiving, they were never aligned with your growth. The goal is not to make someone stay. The goal is to become someone who stays grounded regardless of who leaves. There's a difference. One is fear-based attachment. The other is self-respect. You don't chase clarity from someone who is confused about you. You observe their behavior. You adjust accordingly. You conserve your energy. You don't argue for basic effort. You don't beg for consistency. You don't negotiate your worth. You watch. You feel. You decide. This is emotional intelligence in action. And here's the quiet truth no one tells you. When you truly detach from needing a specific outcome, you become calm. And calmness creates intrigue. Because most people operate from urgency. When you operate from patience, you stand out. Not loudly, but powerfully. Inner peace is not passive. It's disciplined. It's choosing not to escalate when you're triggered. It's choosing not to over-explain when misunderstood. It's choosing to walk away when boundaries are crossed. It's strength wrapped in softness. You can be warm without being weak. You can be open without being dependent. You can love without losing control of yourself. But only if you are willing to confront the parts of you that equate attachment with survival. Healing requires sitting with the discomfort of not knowing, of not chasing, of not fixing immediately. It requires trusting that if someone aligns with you, they will move toward you without coercion. And if they don't, your stability remains intact. That is freedom. Imagine a relationship where you are not monitoring every shift, where you are not decoding every message, where your mood does not swing based on response time, where you express interest calmly and let the rest unfold. That is what secure attachment feels like. It feels quiet, steady, unforced. And when you embody that energy, you don't have to convince anyone of your value. It becomes self-evident. The irony is this: the less you try to hold on to someone, the more natural the connection becomes. Because love cannot breathe inside a clenched fist. So the next time you feel the urge to overextend, pause. Ask yourself whether you're acting from alignment or fear. If it's fear, step back, not to manipulate, but to recalibrate. Your power has never been in how much you give. It has always been in how firmly you stand. And sometimes the most attractive thing you can do is nothing at all.